Hi there! Welcome to History in Retrograde. This is the podcast where we use the ancient art of astrology to help us better understand the past. I'm your co-host, Chandler O'Quinn, and joining me live via satellite is my mom. Hi, Mom!
Howdy, Chandler! How are you?
Doing very well. Are you ready to begin another grand experiment?
I am. It's been a few minutes.
It has. Let's give it a whirl.
All right. And I'd also like to say thank you to all the listeners. We love you all. It's very exciting to see all the places on the map of the world where you're listening from. We love each and every one of you. Thank you so much for taking time to spend your hour with us today.
Yes, thank you so much to everyone who's been listening. We have officially just crossed over 400 total downloads since October 15th. So thank you so much for helping us and spreading the word about our little show here. And for those of you, if this is your first History in Retrograde, I'll let you know how we do things here. In a moment, I will give the astrological birth data of a random historical figure to my mother. Now you, the listening audience, already know who this historical figure is. It is in the title of today's episode. I, of course, know who it is because I selected this person, but Mom has no idea who this mystery history guest could be. So in a moment, I will give her the data necessary to create an astrological birth chart. So that is the birth date, time, and location. She will then input that information into the back computer, and out will come the astrological birth chart, where all of the planets, moons, and stars were at the moment this person was born. She will then give us a blind reading of that chart, doing the best that she can to provide us with information about the personality traits, the characteristics, and the fortunes of this mystery history guest. I'll then ask a few discussion questions, and then I will reveal to her who our mystery history guest is. I'll then give a little background about the person, and we will discuss how accurate the chart was at predicting who that person would be. So without further ado, let us begin.
All right.
This is a male.
Okay.
Born on the 2nd of October, 1937.
Okay.
And I was not able to find a birth time, so we will have to go with noon.
All right.
Country's United States.
Okay.
Shreveport, Louisiana.
Oh, my. Right there. Yes?
Yes, Shreveport, Louisiana. Again, this is a male born October 2nd, 1937. We are going with 12 noon as the approximate time, and born in the United States in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Okay. Well, as it is, when we don't have a birth time, I am going to focus on the planets and not necessarily their houses, but how they interact with each other, because it will give us an idea of who this person was. For this situation, we're going to start with North Node in Sagittarius. So North Node is the direction that you should be going with your life. It's kind of the compass to your destiny. Ooh. So in this situation, this person has North Node in Sagittarius, and Sagittarians are very earthy. And since it is a man, I would assume that since he has North Node in Sagittarius, let me look at where his Mars is. Mars is in Capricorn. Okay. So, sort of how do I want to put this? The word is not coming to me.
Rugged?
But, Well, not necessarily. Well, rugged, yes, but also kind of cavalier.
Cavalier?
Yes,
in
kind
business.
of cavalier in business, because I'm looking at now having Mars in Capricorn, having Jupiter in Capricorn, right? This person has a lot of Earth in their chart. Their moon is in Virgo, their Mercury is in Virgo, their Venus is in Virgo, their Mars is in Capricorn, their Jupiter is in Capricorn. Their Uranus. Okay, see, they have so much air. I mean, so much Earth. All right. So their sun is in Libra, which is in an air sign. Okay. Libra is ruled by Venus, and makes Libra people tend to be pretty easygoing people. All right. They are pretty or handsome. They tend to get along with everyone. They are the air signs are very interesting to begin with, because it isn't like, Aquarians and Geminis and Libras are all so similar, because they're really not. They're very different, but they're all in the element of air. But this person has sun in Libra and moon in Virgo. So this person, I would assume, and Mercury in Virgo, would be very precise in their communications. They would have a work ethic that would be significant, possibly detailed. Virgo is the sign that wants their work to be the best it can be, right? Now, they also have their Mars in Capricorn and their Jupiter in Capricorn trining their moon and their Mercury and their Venus. So this is a work dynamic that is very cordial to itself. This person could easily have been way workaholic, okay? And enjoyed that, really enjoyed the work, okay? They have Saturn in Aries. It's only 1 degree though. So having Saturn in Aries at 1 degree also kind of gives them a little bit of that Pisces, because they're on the cusp. So their lessons have to do with both Pisces, kind of dreamy things, and also Aries, which is very, very motivated. Okay. Their Uranus is in Taurus, which is an interesting place for Uranus to be. Currently, Uranus is in Taurus, and it is going to represent a lot of upheaval in the world, because Uranus rules Aquarius, which is humanitarian, right? And Taurus is more banking and material things, right? So here we have a person who has Uranus in Taurus, which would be during a time, he was born in 1937. Okay. So Uranus went into Taurus, and basically when Uranus went into Taurus this last time, we had the Great Depression, right? So that is interesting. So I'm looking at all these things. See, we have Moon in Virgo, Mercury in Virgo, Venus in Virgo, right? Mm-hmm. And Neptune in Virgo. So here also having this Neptune in Virgo, which Neptune rules Pisces, right? Water, the Neptune, you have all of the things that are under the water. In this situation, this person has Neptune in Virgo conjunct their Mercury and their Venus and their moon, making them, seriously, they could have been, there's some issue there with emotions, because our mother, women, there's some veil regarding women with this person. This person either could tend to put them on a pedestal, or be confused by them, or finds them very dreamy. There's something involved with that Neptune in Virgo conjunct moon, which is right here, right? Conjunct the moon in Virgo. See, that's 18 degrees and this is 19 degrees. Mm-hmm. So it's literally sitting on there. Okay. And Neptune is the dreamy, psychic, artist, musician, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Chiron and Cancer. Chiron is the wounded healer. Chiron and Cancer would be healing the wounds and then nurturing. So there is some nurturing involved. But that Cavalier North Node in Sagittarius, dragging all this earth with it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, because the Sag wants to ride out in front, you know? And then all this earth is like, we better think about this. You know, we really need to consider everything. This person also has Pluto in Cancer. So they have Pluto conjunct their Chiron, which is really big change, you know, in a healing sense. Is any of this making sense?
I think some of the things are making sense. I'm very interested in that cavalier is the word choice, and I'm wondering, is that like, do you mean that in like, because when I think of cavalier, I think of carefree or
yes.
Okay, so but cavalier could also mean that there's like a almost a showiness too.
Yes.
So it's both of those.
Yes.
Okay.
Sagittarius is the cool one. Sagittarius is so cool. Okay. If you lined up a person to represent all of the signs, Sagittarius would be in the corner wearing black, smoking a cigarette with sunglasses on.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Sagittarius is the coolest one.
Okay.
Hands down.
Okay.
All the other ones, I mean, because Scorpio is going to be damn good looking, right? And Leo is going to have a flock of people around them, right? And Cancer's going to be cooking something. And Gemini is going to be holding court. And the Taurus is probably going, you know, it's just each one has its own kind of
energy.
Yeah. And in my mind, a look, right? But in this situation, you know, by giving them the noon time of birth, we can, you know, see what happens if I do it, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So here we have a person by what we've given them a noon time of birth with Sagittarius rising. Okay. So if this person was born around noon, they would be kind of cool, right? They would be the cool kid. And this person would then have this Mars in Capricorn, right? And Jupiter in Capricorn in their first house, if this was their time of birth, which would just intensify the cool factor, except that it's in Capricorn. So this is kind of, if we were going to go with this cool factor, this would be like a person wearing sunglasses and a black turtleneck. And you know what I mean? So they would be conservative cool, right?
Or a suit.
It could be a suit. It could be a really nice suit. Mm-hmm. It could be a very nice suit. All right. We have to go with what my imagination and how I see things, and then, you know, clearly, you know, it's 19. This person was born here, so they could wear a suit. All right. But this is imagining that they were born at noon, which we do not know. All right. It puts Saturn in their third house. All right. So Saturn in Aries is lessons. Honestly, Saturn in Aries would be lessons in warlike things, or lessons in determination, direction. Also, Aries is kind of sexual, fiery sexual. They're a lot. All the Aries things. Saturn is the controlling teacher, right? Saturn is the professor of the chart. Wherever you have Saturn is where your lessons are to be learned, all right? Then we have fourth house, which has nothing in it in this chart, And then we have fifth house, which is Uranus and Taurus in the fifth house. So, wow. Uranus, if it were in someone's fifth house, would be very spontaneous romances and very romantic, because it's Uranus and Taurus, right? And Taurus is very romantic. If anybody is romantic, it's Taurus. Taurus is all about the romance. And fifth house is all things ruled by Leo. So leadership and children and having children and creativity, all pleasurable things. Yes, pleasurable things. There you go. You do it. You do that, Chandler. And then sixth house is Gemini, and there's nothing in there. Then seventh house has that Chiron at 1 degree Cancer. And so this person, if this were the time of their birth, they would have a need to nurture a partner, right? Based on their own lessons and their own suffering, the wounded healer that they have done.
And is that all partners? That's not just talking about romantic partners.
Right. It could be a business. It is one-on-one partners. The seventh house is one-on-one. It could be a family member. It could be a married, a married partner. I don't know why I can't talk today. But it's a one-on-one situation. It could be friend, business associate, whatever. That would put them in a nurturing position. All right. And then we have their Pluto falling in their 8th house. Okay. Per this at 29 degrees. All right. So there's that degree of sorrow, right? And 29 degrees puts their Pluto almost in Leo. Okay. So they have both their Pluto in the 8th house, which is very powerful and can create a legacy, right? Is on one side of it is very, lionish, and on the other side is very nurturing. So it's right on the cusp, okay? Of the 8th house, which is also revelations and powerful people, things like that. Then we have this really heavy 9th house per this chart at this time of birth that has Mercury, Neptune, Moon, and Venus, right? All in Virgo. They would possibly be a teacher or a person that would want to, maybe a preacher even could be, philosophies, or I don't know. I mean, the 9th house is all those side-sharing things, travel and philosophy and things like that. So then 10th house, their sun in Libra would be in the 10th house, which would be very good for career. It's also, on their midheaven, right? So their midheaven is in Libra, their sun is in Libra, and their sun is in the 10th house, which is very good for career, right? Then we come around, we don't really have anything in the 11th house, but we do have North Node in the 12th, which would be the sign of like a prophet or a person who's very psychic, a leader, right? Because it's in Sag, so it could be like, very brave. Also, cavalier, Sag is masculine. So, is anything clicking with you?
Yeah. I think cavalier is definitely a word that people would think of this guy. I think, there are the Pluto being there in between the Leo and the Cancer, and it being lionish and nurturing. I think that fits this guy very well. I think there are a lot of things that make a lot of sense.
Well, all this Virgo is very precise, right? Very smart, very intellectual speaker. Because Mercury in Virgo is, and it's Mercury rules Virgo. Mercury rules Virgo and Gemini. So if you have Mercury in Virgo or Gemini, you are a very capable speaker, and this person, if this were their chart, would be, very interested in speaking their dogma, rallying people to that, if that helps anything. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. So you've kind of covered it a little bit already, but I'll ask just directly, what sort of profession do you think this person would be wanting to go into?
Well, their Mars and Jupiter are in Capricorn, and I connect the Jupiter to the Mars because it would help the Mars in Capricorn. So I would think business. I would think this was a businessman. But they could have been a teacher with all that Virgo. Some sort of teacher.
How would this person carry themselves?
I would assume that this person, being a Libra, right? Their sun is in Libra, which is a very likable person, right? So they're not so much like a Leo rising or anything like that, because we don't know what their rising sign is. If we go by this and we say, oh, okay, so this person, has Sag rising, they would be very cool, very admired. Not in a way that's like, oh, look at how much you have, or look at blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? But just kind of that kind of James Dean thing, where they're just in the room. They don't even have to do anything. They're just cool,
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't know, because I don't know for sure what this person's rising sign is. But if I go by the sun, I would say they were probably very attractive, handsome, in that kind of boy next door way. That's kind of a Libra thing. But also with Mars and Capricorn, they could have come across very kind of businessy.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard without knowing for sure what the rising sign is.
How would this person do in an argument?
Oh my. I don't think you want to argue with this person, because this person, I would assume, would have every single detail to a T. Like they would be able to, it wouldn't be like an argument like rawr. It would just be like, well, these are the facts. And this is how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. And how would this person communicate?
Oh, they would be an excellent communicator. I would think they have Mercury in Virgo. So I would think that they would be a very excellent communicator. And that sun in Libra makes them gregarious. I mean, sometimes it makes people shy, but I would think that this person would be confident in their ability to communicate, because they do the work to make sure that their information is spot on. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it should be.
What role would religion play in their life?
Well, per this chart, if this person were born around noon, it would be huge, because they have all these planets in the 9th house, which is where your religious beliefs and your, dogmas and your philosophies lie. So, that's kind of how you figure out, what people's religions are.
Mm-hmm.
But since I don't know.
If this person saw injustice in the world, what would their reaction be?
I think, and I like to go with the good side, okay? North Node in Sag that would not do well for them. They would probably go forward to expose it at the very least and attack it, at the most. So, they would just ride up to it and stab it with a spear. I don't know.
Is this a persuasive person?
Could be persuasive. They've got that Mars conjunct Jupiter and Capricorn. Capricorns can probably talk you into anything if they're good at it. They can be very manipulative, and that could be for good or bad. You know what I mean? But they also have all of this Virgo and all of this communication. Plus, they have Neptune conjunct this communication, right? So it gives them a little creative edge in their ability to talk people into stuff.
Can you give us any idea of what the parents might be like?
Well, the mother is represented by the moon. And so I would think that the mother was Virgonian, sort of. So the mother would be maybe, could even be a teacher, or, at the far end of it, a medical professional, but I don't think so much at this time. But not as much of a gushing, loving mother as they would be more of a very detailed, mom. Like all of your belongings are put away properly and the house is, kept and all that kind of stuff. And then you go to the dad, which is the sun, and this person has sun in Libra. So you would assume far end of that could be that the father was a lawyer, or in some kind of legal profession, or just kind of maybe a more laid back kind of friendly person.
That pretty much gets all the questions. Is there anything else about the chart that you haven't talked about already?
Not that I can, really go into without having a birth time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say looking at this information.
So looking at the squares and the
squares
trines.
And conjunctions and trines and oppositions and things like that. Just kind of getting an idea of, some of the things that might have affected this person. And they're very overall, they don't have any major red flags or anything like that. You know what I mean? They're just kind of still, calculating and represented by what the planets are and where, they are, what sign they're in, if that makes any sense.
Okay, then I think we are ready for our summary of our findings.
Okay.
So the first thing you said was that this person would be cavalier in business, easygoing, handsome, easy to get along with, precise with communications, a detailed work ethic, wants to make sure that things are as best as they can be, could be a workaholic and enjoy that, dreamy but motivated, issues or confusion with women. This is a cool person, possibly a showy person, lessons in warlike things, determination, and also lessons in determination. Need to nurture a partner, and that could be that is any sort of one-on-one partner. So could be romantic, could be business, could be friendship. is simultaneously lionish and nurturing. Could be a teacher or a preacher. Could have a psychic ability, brave, a leader, a precise, smart, an intellectual speaker, a capable speaker, capable of speaking about their dogma. A possible businessman or teacher, a likable person, very cool. You would not want to argue with this person. He would have every detail. He would be an excellent communicator. Religion would play a huge part in his life. He would want to expose and attack injustice. Could be a persuasive person. Could be a manipulative person. Could talk you into anything. The mother would not be so much gushing, but more analytical, and the father could possibly be more laid back and friendly. Is there anything that I left out?
I just want to clarify that some of the things like the dogma and the philosophies are based on this specific chart, not necessarily what they would be, because we don't know what time they were born.
Okay. Would you like to know whose chart you've been reading?
Yes, I would like to know.
This is the astrological birth chart of Johnnie Cochran.
Wow. Wow. Okay, that gave me chills. Oh my. Oh my goodness. Well, of course. That makes perfect sense. And I don't even have his birth time. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Johnnie Cochran is probably best known for being the lead defense attorney in the O.J. Simpson case. He was the one defending O.J. Simpson and got him acquitted of the double murder trial back in 1995. Johnnie Lee Cochran Jr. Was born October 2nd, 1937 in Charity Hospital in Shreveport, Louisiana. He was born to Johnnie Cochran Sr. and Hattie Cochran. His grandfather was a sharecropper in Louisiana. His father became a life insurance salesman, and his mother sold Avon Cosmetics. Johnnie, growing up, he looked fondly at his time in Louisiana. But his family would move to Los Angeles in 1949, and looking back at his 12 years in Louisiana, life was pretty easy for him. Life was pretty easy for the family. When he was growing up, he didn't really recognize the differences in race. He didn't see a whole lot of white people in his life. He thought that all people were black, Baptist, and ate fried chicken. The Cochrans, after World War II, moved to Los Angeles as part of the Great Migration of African Americans out of the South to major cities. They moved to LA in 1949. Johnnie Cochran Sr. was the top salesman for the Mutual State Life Insurance Company, which was the largest black-owned company in all of California. Johnnie Cochran attended Los Angeles High School. He attended high school in the same graduating class as Dustin Hoffman, and they used to call him Dusty. Growing up, there was a debate in the family as to what Johnny's future would be. His mother very much wanted Johnnie Cochran to be a doctor. But before even the age of 11, Johnnie Cochran knew that he wanted to be a lawyer. And so his dad stepped in and said, well, Johnny, if you want to be a lawyer, just be the best lawyer you can be. In high school, Johnnie Cochran was very much influenced by the Supreme Court case, Brown versus Board of Education. This was argued on behalf of desegregating the schools, that the separate but equal doctrine was not equal, that African Americans were not getting the same education as whites. And Thurgood Marshall was the main lawyer who was arguing the case on behalf of the Supreme Court. And growing up, Johnnie Cochran didn't see a whole lot of black lawyers. He didn't really see a whole lot of white lawyers where he was growing up. Didn't really know a whole bunch about the profession, but seeing this case being argued and all the tactics being used by Marshall and Houston in convincing the Supreme Court of the injustice of segregation really made a lasting impact on the young Johnnie Cochran. Johnnie Cochran graduated LA High School. He attended UCLA and graduated in 1959. Then he got his JD from Loyola and graduated in 1962. And the following year, he was made a deputy city attorney for Los Angeles. And it is during this time that he is really starting to see some of the injustices that African Americans are facing in Los Angeles at the hands of the police department. And he's on the prosecuting side. So he is not he's not defending the African Americans who have been abused by the police, but is instead on the other side and is on the side of the police officers. But he's seeing the incongruities in the reports and in the actions of these police officers, and how the police chief the police chief in Los Angeles was actually going to the southern states to recruit police officers in the Deep South to come out to Los Angeles. So these police officers aren't even in the community. They're not even, they don't know any of the people that they are actually inflicting this justice upon. And in the early 60s in Los Angeles, there was a definite disparity of African Americans showing up being assaulted by police officers. Eventually, Johnnie Cochran left the prosecution and went instead to become his own lawyer. And one of his major cases, his first case as a lawyer for himself, was the Deadweiler case. So this happened the year after the Watts riots. If anyone is familiar with the mid-60s in Los Angeles, all these problems with police brutality really came to a head in August of 1965. There were 6 days of riots after the culminating from all of this brutality that African Americans had been facing at the hands of white police officers. And so the following year, a man named Leonard Deadweiler and his wife, they had just recently moved to Los Angeles from Georgia, and the wife was 8.5 months pregnant. She started to have contractions and labor pains, and so Leonard decided that he needed to get his wife to the hospital as quickly as possible. He tied a white handkerchief to the antenna of his car and tried to signal everyone that he was in distress, need to get to the hospital as quickly as possible, was speeding through the streets of Los Angeles. Police officers pulled him over, and with guns drawn, put the gun into the car, aimed it at Leonard. The police officer said that the car started to lurch forward, and so the police officer shot, and he killed Leonard Deadweiler. Leonard fell into the lap of his wife, and his last words were, "She's having a baby."
Oh my. Oh my.
Johnnie Cochran defended, was made the lawyer for Leonard's wife as she went off and tried to get a wrongful death case against the city of Los Angeles. And this was a case that was televised. All 8 days of the inquiry were televised across Los Angeles. Johnnie Cochran became very well known to everyone. And unfortunately, the case was found that the police officer had done nothing wrong, and that there was no unjustified use of force in the case of Leonard Deadwyler. The case was lost, but Johnnie Cochran became very well known throughout Los Angeles. He continued being a lawyer and a successful lawyer and going after police misconduct, especially, and civil rights cases. In 1978, he decided that it was time for him to try and fix the system from the inside. So he went back and became the assistant district attorney for the county of Los Angeles. In the late 70s, there's another incident that is very integral to the life of Johnnie Cochran. He was a very successful lawyer. So he was driving in Los Angeles in a brown Rolls Royce. He had his initials on his license plate. So JCJR's, Johnnie Cochran Jr., that was his license plate, and his brown Rolls Royce driving through Los Angeles with his two children in the back, and he is pulled over by Los Angeles Police Department. He is pulled over by 3 squad cars. They tell him to get out of the car, put his hands on his head. When he gets out of the car, he sees the three police cars there. He sees the officers with guns drawn, barricaded behind their doors. He steps aside to get out of the street, and the police officer slams him against the roof of his Rolls Royce and starts looking through Johnnie Cochran's bag and finds that he is currently assaulting the district attorney, the assistant district attorney of Los Angeles. So essentially one of his bosses. And the children were in the back screaming and crying that this was happening to their dad. And Johnnie Cochran was not... as soon as he found out, the police officer found out who he was dealing with, he tried to make excuses and he tried to step back, but Johnnie Cochran was not going to let that happen and demanded that the sergeant come onto the scene to understand why this had happened. And they made excuse... Oh, well, we thought that the Rolls Royce was possibly stolen. Well, why would you think that the Rolls Royce was being stolen? Because an African-American man is driving it on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. It has my initials are on the license plate. It was very telling to him of what the police department and their racial profiling and the things that were going on in the late 70s in Los Angeles. He would again get out of the prosecution and go back into private practice. And in the early 80s, he was actually involved in a case which stopped chokeholds from being used in all of Los Angeles. So from 1982 to the present day, a police officer cannot use a chokehold to detain a suspect. Continued making great strides, winning lots of civil rights cases, police brutality cases, and he started to make a few celebrity clients along the way. So during his whole career, he would defend people such as Puff Daddy or Sean Diddy Combs, Tupac Shakur, Tukey Williams, Jim Brown, Snoop Dogg, Michael Jackson would be one of the cases that he would defend in the first child molestation case against Michael Jackson, which did not actually go to court, and Michael Jackson settled outside of court. But Johnnie Cochran was Michael Jackson's lawyer. And then everything changed for Johnnie Cochran starting in June of 1994. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were murdered on June 12, 1994, and the lead suspect in the case was O.J. Simpson. O.J. was a very famously known African-American football player and actor, and there was a very famous police chase when O.J. and his friend went trying to escape police and televised all over the nation. So if people didn't know who O.J. was before, they certainly knew after June 17th of 1994. Johnnie Cochran was not initially a defense attorney for Simpson. He was a media personality. He was called on by the news broadcasts, such as the NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw, to give his insights into the case. And O.J. saw these interviews that Cochran was giving and wanted Johnnie Cochran to be on the defense team. At first, Johnnie Cochran was not the lead defense attorney. Robert Shapiro was the lead defense attorney. But as the trial progressed during the Christmas holidays of 1994, Robert Shapiro went on vacation. He went to Maui, and Johnnie Cochran and the rest of his team were working all the way through the Christmas holidays to make sure that they have the best defense for their client. And O.J. saw this and also saw that Robert Shapiro had never defended a murder case and had never gone to trial like this, and knew that Johnnie Cochran would be the best bet to be the lead defense attorney. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the nooks and crannies of the O.J. Simpson case, but for those of you who were not alive or not cognizant of the world at that time, this was the trial of the century. This was on every major news station. The trial was broadcast on cable TV, round-the-clock coverage. Everyone knew what was going on. The media had certainly made all of its ideas known as to their belief in the guilt of O.J. Simpson. Everybody had an opinion on the case, and everyone saw Johnnie Cochran every day during this trial, and saw that he was a very fancy dresser. He had very nice suits and all sorts of colors. Also, his tie always matched his handkerchief, and he had a tremendous command of the English language. And his performance as the defense attorney became well known throughout the media. If any of you are fans of Seinfeld, like I am, Jackie Childs was directly based off of Johnnie Cochran and the sort of cadence and the style that Johnnie Cochran had while he was in the O.J. Simpson trial. One of the greatest turns of phrase to come out of the trial from Johnnie Cochran happened during the 8-hour closing arguments for the defense, when Johnnie Cochran was making reference both to the bloody glove that O.J. Simpson could not fit his hand into, and the entire timeline of the prosecution, where he said, "If it don't fit, you must acquit." And that became one of the last things that the jury heard before they went into deliberations. They went into deliberations, had about 4 hours of deliberating, came out the next day, and on 10/07, October 3rd, 1995, the world sort of stood still in waiting of what the verdict would be. There are lots of kids who talk about televisions being rolled into their school classrooms so that they could see the verdict of this major trial. And at 10:07, the jury came back that O.J. Simpson was found not guilty on all counts. This was a great victory for O.J. and Johnnie Cochran, but very much divided the nation. 75% of all Caucasian people following the case reported that they were upset, that they believed that O.J. Simpson was guilty and that he got off and was set free, having committed the murder of his ex-wife. While 70% of all African Americans said that they believed that this was finally justice, that they saw a black person with a black lawyer finally getting justice in the system. Johnnie Cochran would go on to defend many celebrities and defend. He liked to call his clients OJs and no J's. That there were people all over the nation who we're still suffering from the hands of police and police brutality and all sorts of unspeakable things that have been done to them by police officers while they were in custody. And Johnnie Cochran would come to their defense, whether they had money or not, and a lot of times win the case in their favor. What I'd like to just end with is that Johnnie Cochran was much more than the showy lawyer from the trial of the century. Johnnie Cochran was a man who was fiercely dedicated to civil rights. He was fiercely dedicated to issues in our society that still plague us to this day. Civil rights, police brutality, racial profiling, excessive force. These are things that we have not shaken off, that are still very much a part of people's everyday lives. And there are lots of people who talk about being, campaigners for social justice. But I think the example of Johnnie Cochran is that these issues are so much bigger than just a hashtag or a slogan that you can put onto a banner, that these require lots of discussion, that they require an intellectualization of these problems, and to really get the change that we want in the world. And Johnnie Cochran lived his whole life trying to get that change. And I would say that this chart is pretty accurate showing of who Johnnie Cochran was.
So you think this chart, as it stands, with us drawing it with a noon birth time, represents Johnnie Cochran?
I mean, it's possible. We could go back at a later date and change around the times and see things that are maybe more so. But I think that a lot of the things are very close.
Yes, I agree. Normally I don't go with Libra and go straight to lawyer, but Libra, the symbol for Libra is the scales, right? The scales of justice. So that's very interesting. And having that Jupiter conjunct Mars in Capricorn, and then all this Mercury in Virgo. I mean, and imagine what this man had to do so much more than other men might have had to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To get where he went and how far he went. And I remember very much watching all of the trials. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I mean, because somebody was a baby at the time and I did have to take care of them. But I don't know who that was, Chandler. Yeah. I think it was you. And, so very interesting, but definitely it's possible that he could have that Sagittarius rising. But that North Node in Sag absolutely gives him that I will ride right into it. I will go right to it. You know what I mean? And, wow. Very interesting. Another very nice choice, Chandler. Very, very lovely, information that you've brought that I believe most people don't know about Johnnie Cochran, and what they do know, I believe, for the most part, is connected to the OJ trial.
Right.
But he never missed a beat. He never did. He really was doing his job and doing it well. You know what I mean?
And one of the things you're talking about is like you don't want to get into an argument with him because he's going to know every detail. He's going to have every detail. And, anyone else, I have a passing knowledge of the trial. And, of course, I was not really cognizant. I was months old. But in the years since, I have looked at it and, early on, most people would look at the jury and say, how could you come to this? How could you acquit him? All the things make so much sense. Of course, OJ did. Lots of people would say, of course, OJ killed his ex-wife. He had this history of all this stuff. But when you look at how Johnnie Cochran would go through the timelines and minutes and talking about and getting all the experts to go in about DNA and all of that stuff, is he had every single detail, and that was the only way that he could have gotten to the verdict that ended up happening.
Right. Because people assume, well, the reputation is this and the motive is that and all that. But that's not how court works.
Right. Right.
Court works by you have to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. You have to prove it. It doesn't matter what the opinion is. It doesn't matter what their reputation is. It doesn't matter what. Anything other than just the facts of the case. That's it. Yeah. Very precise. And it shows all that. No matter what house this is in, it's all right there. And it's trining all this Capricorn, and so very, very, very interesting man.
Is there anything else that makes more sense now that you know who it is?
Well, it all makes more sense now that I know who it is, because of the, I was looking at the Chiron, in Cancer, coming from, a place of wounded healer, that's very, because it's exactly, opposed his Mars. Right?
Yeah.
He was motivated to heal. You know what I mean? Very interesting. Very interesting.
On our scale of right on the money to way out in outer space, I think this is pretty much right on the money. This is pretty much who Johnnie Cochran was. This concludes this episode of History in Retrograde. Thank you so much for listening. And if you would like to reach out, we are available on socials at Gmail, historyinretrograde@gmail.com, Facebook at History in Retrograde, and Instagram at Retrograde Podcast. And included in the show description is a link to all of those. Please reach out and give us any suggestions you have about the show, any future ideas that you have for the show. We'd love to hear them. Also included in the description is a link to our PayPal account, and if you are feeling generous, if you really like what you hear, any amount would really help us in getting better equipment and growing the show. And as always, in conclusion, as long as your houses are in order and the stars are aligned, everything will be just fine.
Yes, thank you all so much for listening. And to those of you who are sending little $5 and $10 contributions to the show, we greatly appreciate it. It absolutely helps. Everything helps. And we look forward to having another show for you next week.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Salal Creek Studio.